Okay, the box. So, as I pointed out in the inspection, the bottom's kind of rusty, but not bad. This is just surface rust. It's like a spider moved into the latch. Hinge. Now I've been lubing this down a couple of times over every week for a few weeks, just spraying WD on the handle D-rings and on the hinge. Okay, for this operation you're going to need 3 special tools. One is your Peterson & Noble tinning hammer, or a lightweight ball peen, whatever you got. A 6-penny nail, and your Peterson Made in USA old vice grips. So you take your 6-penny nail and stick it down the center of the hinge, and you just lightly tap and watch the hinge pin, see if it comes out the other end. So hopefully this starts moving. Like I said, I've been greasing this thing up with WD for like a couple of weeks now, so here it goes. Yep, she came out, I'm gonna say 3/8 of an inch. So now with the vice grips, just very gingerly grab that wire, a pretty good grip on it. You don't want to deform it, but get a pretty good grip on it, and then just tap the vice grips. And it'll just come right out. And there you have it, 1 hinge pin, and off comes the lid. Keep blade sharp, lubricate often. Looks like a spider moved in here too. We'll straighten this up, make a new handle, and clean it up a little bit. Now the box itself. Somebody bent over the blade retention, the blade storage arms. These two arms stick straight out, these 2 brackets, and they hold blades. Somebody bent the heck out of that. That holds the rear of the saw. Okay. Well, let's go to it. What we're going to do first is straighten these edges. See the bends in the chopstick, you can see. You can see how not straight that is, and how not straight that is, and fold it over. So we'll straighten this all out. Okay, I like to start with the straightest part first, and then work towards the worst. So I'm going to take my dime store straight edge here, and I'm going to use a poly hammer, which is nothing more than the poly end of the garland number 1, and I'm just going to straighten this edge up, get her nice and even. Okay, it's just regular sheet metal. You just find the high spots and pound on them, and then find the low spots and pound on them from the other side. That's all there is to it. That is good enough. The other thing about beating these things back into shape. I like to keep the old paint, and if you keep working the sheet metal too much, you start knocking paint off. Okay, this side's way not straight. There's a good 1/4 inch in here. I can get the whole chopstick in there. So before I start pounding, I'm gonna just manually try to get her back in a little bit of shape. Just with my thumbs. Okay, let's see how that looks. Huh, pretty good. So this lip is folded over, so need a little bit bigger tinner's hammer as a dolly here. Just fold this back up. So. Pretty good. This corner's got to come out. So the little tinner's hammer. This has got to go in. Good enough. Okay, the front edge. Need a longer straight edge here. So she's pretty straight. That corner needs to come out a little bit. This corner needs to come out a little bit. She's pretty, I don't know, about a 1/4 inch in there, right at the latch. So in this one, I'm going to start at the corners, just clean those up just a little bit. Okay. Now let's go after the biggest deformity, which is almost dead even with the latch. So the box sheet metal, and it is dented, not just the lip. I can feel it on the inside. Probably can't see it too well on the camera, so this whole latch has got to go out. So again, I'm going to start with my thumbs. Let's see if I can. Oh, came loose. Cut it about in half. Need some more though. Okay, these are coming high now. It pulled away from the corner, so that means the whole front is moving out. So we're gonna have to push these point and this point in and this point out. So it's hammer time. Hammer for a dolly. Bring the center out. A little more serious dolly here. The Bell Telephone lineman's hammer. Not bad. Down about 1/8 of an inch. If you haven't pounded tin before, it doesn't, when you first hear about it, you don't think it would work beating on sheet metal with a hammer, but it really does. Okay, I'm gonna do a little more manual reforming here. Just in the low spots. Almost perfect, just right here. Just right here. And it's fairly straight. Straight enough for me. Maybe just a wee bit low, right about here. But mostly it's right here. Okay, I'm gonna lay it over on its face. Okay, now I'm using the edge of the rear table of the workmate as a straight edge. And I'm looking down at it, and I'm just gonna tune it a little bit. Just by knocking her flat where she's high. Again, using the Garland #1. Just right here. The only spot left. A little bit more. Okay, hammer formed our way into a pretty straight edge there. Okay, not bad, not bad. Okay, now the blade holder brackets. And another special tool, the 12-inch diamond caulk and horseshoe adjustable wrench. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to twist these blade holder brackets back out again. And then, so these are welded to the box, so be a little bit careful on these old welds, but get this thing bent back in shape as close as we can. Before we put any serious force into it. Okay. So with my fingers, twist these in a little bit, push these in a little bit, just get a little bit of spring back. Okay. And there. Okay. There's the blade holder brackets. Now this, I don't know what the heck happened there, but I'll try this manually first. Okay, just a word here. So this got pushed down and that pulled in. Kind of hard to show it here, but you can see it on the hinge barrel. Touching, 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 not touching, 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 touching. So this getting pushed down pulled the back of the box in, so it's bellied in right here. So I'm going to straighten this out. That'll push this hinge back straight, hopefully, without having to beat it up. it'll close the gap about halfway. So it's a little bit more straightening here. I'm gonna need some leverage here because okay, Uncle Andre's pry bar here, and a couple blocks of wood to use as a fulcrum. I got the nail puller end under this bracket. Just gingerly, gently, but steadily prying up on it. You can see it coming up. Gently, gently, gently. But, don't be afraid to use some force, but just go easy. That looks good. And the hinge pins are almost dead straight. Just a wee bit more. Okay, now the culprit is that when whoever bent that, this side of the saw holder is bent that way towards the camera. So now I got to open this up, but hold this position and open this up so it pushes the back of the box back. So I'm going to lay it on its belly to do that. Okay, I got my 5-inch Cincinnati clamp holding her down. I got a couple of blocks of wood under it to keep the latch elevated off the surface of the bench. And I'm going to take Uncle Andre's crowbar and a shingle, and I'm going to use the clamp, the Cincinnati clamp as a fulcrum, and I'm going to use Uncle Andre's crowbar to just gently push that slot open a little bit more. Being careful not to slip off the clamp. Check progress here. Hey, pretty good. Okay, now the acid test. So I'm going to take the hinge pin. I'm going to just give it a little dab of Hoppy's number 9. The old man taught me to love that stuff from when I was just a little kid. And look at that, it goes in with no binding. Okay, an extreme close-up of the inside of the box. All I gotta do now is clean it up. There's some really crusty, I don't even know what this is. Sawdust impregnated with oil, probably. I'm just gonna clean it up. All cleaned up, just with dish soap and some scrubbing. Like I said, I'm gonna leave this rust and paint. You can see after it cleaned up the kind of bright spots, the original paint color. It's gonna stay just like that. I'm just gonna oil rub it. Okay, next step now, I took the lid, which I haven't touched yet, and I just took a couple of pieces of music wire that I wound a couple handles into and stuck them in the ends of the hinge so I can see how the lid is gonna fit. And as you can see, the latch is not quite making, so this lid is bent out this way. So I'm going to reshape the lid so it fits. Okay, now what I'm doing is I'm just taking the diamond caulk and addressing these high spots, the parts of the lid that are sticking out. As you can see, it stopped oil canning. And the low spots, and the high spots, and the low spots, and the high spot. It latches, it works, the hinge is staying aligned. Okay, I'm going to touch it up with a hammer. Okay, to dress the edge, I'm taking my dolly, aka my bell telephone hammer. Just clamping it in the vise, in the workmate, nice and steady. And then I'm going to take the lid, like so, and I'm just going to work along the high spots and low spots with the garland number 1. Hammering on the low spots, hammering on the high spots, dolly on the low spots. Not too much, just enough to take out the dings and dents. Okay, word about this little sheet metal, especially when you're working it. It gets hard spots and soft spots in it. So even when you're forming it with your hands, like right now I'm just gently bending this out a little bit because I want to straighten up this line. You can feel it'll give in more areas than others. So go easy, and then when I get to this point where it's almost as straight as I want it, I just switch over to my thumb as the dolly and just very, very gently tapping and bending and pushing and pulling. You don't want to fatigue the sheet metal, it'll crack. And this old stuff, like all of us old guys, are a little bit brittle, so just take it easy, take your time. Okay, there she is. Now, that edge is not perfect, but it's good enough, as good as I want it. It closes, the latch works, the hinges align. There's a big old dent right here. It looks like it got smushed from the outside, and that is stretching the sheet metal that way, and there's a big divot right here. This point is that way, that point is that way. To knock this high point down, now we're on the outside, there's the dent, and this D-ring is pulled in. That's why she's oil canning. I just clamp my dirty block of wood into the workmate. I'm going to line the dirty piece of wood onto the low spot, which is right there. Oil can it out, and then work this down. So just gently, hammer blows, just gently push this down. And then the other side of the dent. I'm basically just letting the weight of the hammer fall. I'm not bashing it, I'm just letting the hammer fall on that high spot. Now I'm going after the hinge barrels. Just taking my straight edge, line it along the tops of the hinge barrels, and just bending it with my thumbs, going after the low spots, bending the low spots high, the high spots low, very gently, just getting it all on one line. It's pretty good. Okay, now the hinge itself, the welds at the end, these are spot welded on to the lid. The welds at the ends look like they're failed, so I'm gonna get some very small number 4 screws and screw down the ends of this. I generally don't like drilling holes, but in this case I don't want the rest of the hinge to break off, and I don't want to weld it because I don't want to burn up the paint, so I'll resort to a hardware-based solution for this one. Okay, found these little number 4 button heads in the hardware collection, so I'm going to put them in here, and that black oxide finish will just disappear into the dark green and rust. So I'm going to drill pilot holes, number 4 clearance hole, but clamp up the hinge from the inside before you drill the holes. You just, where the welds are broken, you'll just bend it away. So here goes. My vice grips are too narrow to reach over the hinge barrels, so I'm too lazy to go get a skinny one, so I'm going to use the chopstick to reinforce my clamp joint to drill these middle holes. Okay, there's the lid, handles off, dents are all worked out, edges cleaned up, straightened up, hinges straightened up. Edge is still a little bit wavy, but like I said, that's as good as that's as far as I'm gonna go. So this thing's now gonna get a bath. Okay, there she is, all washed up. You can see on the inside here this wonderful green, dark green. They painted these things. This had obviously didn't get a lot of UV exposure, so it's kind of the original color, and it's a crinkle paint. It's pretty well rusted off here, but love that color. 3-step drying process. One is I just dry it with the hair dryer, and then a blow gun, and blow all the moisture out of all the seams and welds and everywhere else. I'll go around and do that until I don't see any more water coming out. And then step 3, let it sit and let evaporation do its thing. Okay, the temporary hinge pins are back in, and that fit is righteous. Goes right into the latch works. Looking real good. This edge and this edge take all the beatings because obviously that's where the tools go in and out. So I reinforce, when I make boxes, I reinforce these with heavier gauge steel, or I just make the box out of 16 gauge, so she's nice and tough. But there you go. Another small improvement. I put some industrial grade rubber feet on the bottom just to keep the box off shelves or off the bottom of my truck or whatever, just so it doesn't get any rustier from sitting in moisture. And now we're ready to put on the lid. Reinstalling the hinge pin. So I got the lid on the box. I've got the temporary hinge pin, one of them, installed over there. Hinge pin. And what I did here actually was I sharpened the end of it just a little bit with my Dremel, just give it a little point, make it easier to start in there. And now I'm just going to start shoving it in a little at a time. Hear that? It just hit the temporary hinge pin, so we're getting there. So I'm just going to pull this out a little bit and keep tapping her in. She's in. Handle time. What we got here are the 2 welded on loops that hold the D-rings that hold the old handle, and they're 6 inches apart. This is what Div might call pad, plywood aided design. So zoom in on this. Okay, what we're going to make the handle out of is a 1/2 inch conduit elbow. Why 1/2 inch? Because that's what I had. So first thing I did is I just took a piece of plywood and 2 6-penny finish nails and pounded them in 6 inches apart. So that sets up the distance between the D-rings. Then I marked the center of the elbow, and then my idea is that I'm going to take these top loops of these cable clamps and I'm going to use them like so to hold the handle. So in order to get this spaced out correctly so I have room to put the nuts and get some decent drop from the handle, so the handle has enough distance drop from the top, from the bottom of the handle to the top of the box to get your hand in there. I'm going to take 2 magnets, which are, I don't know, 3/16 of an inch thick, attach them to the nails, and then line up the center of the elbow with a line that I drew here on the plywood that's 3 inches between each nail, so right up the middle. And I took my Sharpie marker and one of the elbows, or sorry, one of the cable clamps, and then I just marked the pipe, the conduit. I did the same thing on the other side. Just marked the conduit. Then took a high-tech wedge of a shingle and marked the middle of the conduit and drilled 2 holes right where the lines met. Did that on both sides. So now the little cable clamp fits right in there. So now what I'm going to do is sculpt the ends of the tube to give them a little bit better of a look. I got to think about a little bit how I want to actually do that. But I need to get access to the nuts from the top, and I need to make it look like it's not just a cut off piece of conduit. So that's what I'm going to do now, is figure out how I want to sculpt that and make it look pretty. Okay, decided what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut the ends of the tube roughly in that shape. But to start with, I'm going to establish where to make that scallop by punching the inner hole all the way through so that I can then have clearance for a nut driver from the top, and then cut the rest of this away. So start with drilling the hole, just an 1/8 inch drill bit, and then just a step bit to get to the right diameter for the nut driver, which is looks like a 1/2 inch ought to do it. some 100 grit to give it a brushed look. Follow that up with some 220. And just some dirty mineral spirits. On a dirty rag. And then last but not least, a coat of oiled linseed oil to install. I looped the little U-bolts from the cable clamps over the D-rings, started the nuts and ran them all the way down. And then it's just a matter of finagling the U-bolts into the hole, into the holes on the handle, and then a washer over it. Laying a little nut on it. And then run them down. And there you go. Kind of has a nice pre-industrial look to it. Lays down flat. Does everything you want a handle to do. Okay, test cut. Plywood factory put together, Skilsaw has put asunder. Quickie little note, I added a blade retraction handle. I just made a little bracket out of steel, put a spacer and a wing nut on it, and bolted it with 2 number 4 machine screws to the blade, the movable blade guard. One big downside of these old guys is there's no way to retract the blade from the top. So the old time guys who had a lot of guts would just reach down here and grab the bottom of the blade guard, but seen a lot of carpenters with missing fingertips. So I just put this on, and that way you can retract the blade guard and hold it while you're gripping the saw, and then let her go if you need to. Been a fun project. Boy, she sure looks pretty. That wonderful old American tech. Well, on to our next project. I think I got an old Portaband hidden in the pile that I'm going to redo next. But